Hey Rosemary, alright, so here's your past life spread. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at where we are, what you did with the majority of your time, an important day with the relationship and feelings involved, another important day, the death, and the lesson learned. And we'll get hints of time throughout, alright? So all I'm going to do is relay to you the images and impressions I'm getting, and your job is going to be to try to make connections where you can based on what you're hearing here and connect that with your current life. And I'll try to help how I can. All right? So let's start. So here we are going to Africa. And what's really cool is this card keeps popping up. And so I shuffle, 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 and Africa keeps popping up. So that's really interesting to me. And what's fun is that, there's so many places in Africa we can go. And I haven't gotten this one in the previous few. So what it feels like is we're looking at more of a desert landscape. So it feels like there's a desert involved, or at least you're going to be spending time in a desert. It feels hot. It feels like a wide, it's just like, so yes, desert, but it doesn't feel very like duney. What images are coming through is of a young man actually going down into caves, and it looks like stone, like there's stone on the outside, so it's like the beigey color of sand, but like stone. And so we're looking at a male life, and it feels like what we could be looking at could be Egypt. So it feels like we're going towards the Egyptian area, and what you really want to look at, like on a map, would be how big the desert area encompasses, because a lot of Africa is also jungle and things like that. So look and see how big that geographically how big that desert is, because it could be Egypt, but it can also be like edging outwards. Like it feels like we're not looking at a major it feels like we're not looking at a major city. It feels like we're looking kind of on the outskirts. So almost like remote towns or villages during this time. And it feels like the time period, I want to say it's not like ancient Egypt, how we think of with the pharaohs. It feels a little bit it's not so far back as that, but it still feels like what we're looking at, the people there would be very aware of that time period, almost like we're coming out of, just coming out of the ancient Egyptian period, how we all think of it in society. That kind of period. So keep that in mind. And how you can be making connections already is, one, if you've ever been pulled towards or intrigued by Africa, or even more specifically Egypt, if you've ever had an interest in Egypt or ancient Egypt. Also, you might be someone that finds desert landscapes to be either, one, very beautiful and therapeutic, or two, you might not like it at all. So how you can be making connections is by either going towards the thing that we're seeing here because your soul is used to it and likes it or is comfortable in it, or two, it could be opposite because your soul already experienced it, and usually if they experienced it in a way that was hard, they'd be coming back wanting to not have to deal with that experience again, or not caring for it. You see, so you can make connections both ways like that. So keep that in mind as well. This could actually also speak to you in the way, like if you are dehydrated, if you're someone that's dehydrated in this life, or you don't drink enough water, or that kind of thing, that would make sense too, because it feels like we're really looking at like an arid, deserty kind of landscape, at least for the majority of your time. So keep that in mind. Now, what you did with the majority of your time, the occupation here, this is actually a card that is called the Wanderer. So this is someone who moves around a lot. And what it felt like when I put this down, because sometimes this can actually mean like moving, continents and countries and vast movement, but it can also mean just someone who moves around for the sake of not really feeling established or rooted or having a home. So what it feels like here is that we're looking at someone that would be an orphan, or someone whose parents died when they were young, but it feels like this person was on their own from a very young age and had to make do. And how you can connect is that if you find in your life that you're a very resourceful person, independent person, not wanting help even to it can even be to the point where you don't like to receive help, like where it might even hinder you because you don't want to feel obligated towards others, or you don't really know how to accept help. That could be a connection. On the other hand, you could have chosen to come back in this life to be born into a family who is like in your face, overprotective, on top of everything. Maybe you feel like you don't have a lot of freedom because your soul could have chosen to want to be born into a very like caretakey kind of family because there was a lack of family here, you see? So you could be making connections that way as well. So keep that in mind. This could also speak to you if you have, if you feel like you have trouble like settling down, or wanting to travel a lot, or wanting to be on the move, or even like little things like needing to get away. Sometimes you might feel like you just need to get away. You know, like that kind of thing. So keep that in mind. On the other hand, you could have come back to be someone that really wants to set roots down, and you want your established reputation home base. So there's connections there as well. So keep that in mind, see if it makes sense. If it speaks to you, great. If not, that's fine. It's just what's coming up. So let's go to the first important day here. Actually, before we go here, I do want to mention the fact that we're looking at a male life. Sometimes when we look at a life where it's an opposite gender of what you currently are, it can mean a couple of things. It can mean, one, it's coming up to explain any energy in you that you put off, that you feel is not what I guess society would say. Like, let's say you're a woman and we're seeing a male life and you find that you don't have what society calls feminine qualities, or you're not very feminine, you know what I mean? Like, you don't put off a super feminine vibe, you know, and that's, of course, you know, I hate saying that because that's kind of a label, and it's like, it totally like by society's standards. But if you find that you have more of a masculine vibe, or more of a masculine energy, which just means, you know, more forward, or more overt, or I guess, like, I hate the word aggressive, but just more like, what's the word? It's like confident. I like that word better. Just more like confident, extroverted, that kind of thing. That would be explained by seeing this kind of life. Or it also means that you're very balanced, where you feel like you have a balance of both energies and you know how to use them fine and you're comfortable. It can also indicate, if you're a female, it can indicate you having been a tomboy or still a tomboy, you know, that kind of thing as well. So there's that. And then, of course, we have to go to the other end of the spectrum here, and it can also mean that you've chosen to be born in this life as very feminine, very female, because we're looking at a male life here. So it could mean that you came back to experience something very different. So keep that in mind as well. Now let's go to the first important day here. We have the Conquered, Welcome, They Have Come card. So this usually indicates that either one, there's new people, or there's new people or energies coming into your vicinity, either one, because they've conquered and taken over kind of thing, you know, like wars and stuff, or just new people are arriving because they're looking for a new home kind of thing. So with that comes this relationship card, which is the Karmic card. It means that there's somebody present here who is basically like in your soul family in a way, where it's you're kind of owing each other, or there's an obligation between you, or a contract or an agreement that you guys will be in each other's lives in a certain way to affect each other so that you learn lessons. And the feelings here are happy. So what it feels like is that it feels like there is a reunion of sorts taking place, but on a soul level, almost like you're meeting people. Okay, it feels like we're looking at this person. So you're this person who is, it's almost like the mobility card here is you moving around in order to survive. Almost like you do a job here, and you do a job there, and you do a job there, and you're just constantly working, moving around so you can just survive. And it feels like here we're looking at you. It's almost like you're the newcomer, because I feel like it's you taking on a new job. And I feel like the new job you're taking on is with a family. And it feels like this family, for example, would have something like a farm, something that they are making where they live that needs attention. And then when it's done, they exchange it or they sell it. So it feels like a farm kind of, but yeah, I mean, it just doesn't feel like plants coming out of the ground kind of farm. It feels like there's something being harvested or something. It's almost like done indoors. I'm just trying to get more like, trying to see what's going on. It like takes place. So there's something that is being made almost like it feels like in a chamber where there's actually not a lot of sunlight, but for a reason, because it has to be cool and dark for whatever is being done in this chamber that's being harvested to be sold later. I don't know. It's almost like, you know what I want to say? I want to say it's like hydroponics, like how people grow things hydroponically, except here there wasn't electricity. So it's almost like they're like cultivating something in a chamber, whatever, but the whatever it is, you're working for them, and I feel like you actually become somewhat part of the family for the first time. It feels like you have a family, and I feel like that's where the karmic card comes in. It's almost like not just one person, it's like this family unit accepting you as part of their own, and it's like you're staying on more permanent than usual. So I feel like the happy card comes in because you're feeling feelings you haven't felt in a long time. It feels like things are breaking down, like where you've put walls up, it's like the walls are coming down. So keep that in mind, and however you may be able to connect with that, it could be that you're someone that does have walls up until you meet some, like, it's all about the person you meet. So whether it's a friend or a relationship or whoever, it's like you have to feel a certain level of comfort and trust before you're able to allow them into your inner circle. You might be someone that's like that, because that's what we're looking at here is like these walls are up, but over time, it's like there's this feeling of acceptance. It's almost like you might be someone that, even if you don't realize it, you might be looking for almost like acceptance from others before you feel comfortable with yourself in certain situations. And if that's the case, it could stem from here. And this might be coming up almost like a message that those walls, if you have those walls or you've had that feeling, it's not necessary. If anything, it could be holding you back, whereas you might be seeing it as like a security mechanism. It's like it's not needed anymore because you already went through that. So it's almost like a message in a nutshell that's like, let the love in. Let the love in. And the happy card comes up because that's really a joyous, like, I feel like the whole reason we're here is to try to live a joyful existence, because we're finding that karma doesn't really play a role anymore in this time period, because there are so many energy shifts taking place lately. We're finding that karma doesn't play a role unless you let it play a role. And so that can be a heavy burden. And if you choose to let go of that karma, what's left is your role is to live a joyful existence, because the more joy you pour into your life, the more on your path you are, and the more expanded your soul becomes. And I feel like this is just another message for you, like a little bit, like kind of like a tip, like advice to, like, another thing you could be doing to let more joy in, right? To let more happiness in. So it's almost like a little bit like a message and some advice to realize that your role is to find as much joy as you can in this life. Like, it's time to like focus on you, and focusing on you and letting that joy in isn't a selfish thing. It's almost necessary. You want to get on your path. You want to expand your soul. So I feel like that's why this is coming through. But connect in it in whatever way it connects with you too. All right? Because the messages that come through, they've got to vibe with you. So let's go to the next important day. Here we have the trauma card. The trauma card is pretty obvious what it means. It's just about what's happening. So I'm trying to see what's going on here. The card involved is the soulmate card, and the feelings here are neutral. And so what's going on actually, because a lot of times the trauma card indicates like a lot of times it's physical, but here I feel like we're looking at an emotional trauma, and we're seeing a theme come up all throughout now until here of abandonment, neglect, or loss. And keep that in mind for your current life of a theme of abandonment or neglect. If those are things that trigger you, if you're triggered by the idea of someone leaving you, of losing someone, if you're very overprotective of, if you have children, your children, or if you're in a relationship, or if you're very possessive of somebody, because of a deep down thing of being left or abandoned. Because right here, what we're seeing is what it feels like is that this family you're with, I feel like there is a love that you have formed for, I feel like their daughter. That's what it feels like. And it feels like on some level, there's a shared love between you two. However, there's also this feeling of an arranged marriage taking place. Because I feel like even though this family is not like aristocracy, so to speak, they're still well off. And I feel like we're looking at a time period where arranged marriages are a thing and quite normal and common. But I also feel like there is like unions made out of love as well. It just depends on the family. And I feel like what we're looking at here is that there is a soulmate connection between you two. However, the trauma comes at the break of that connection in the sense of an arranged marriage for her. And I feel like you have to let her go. There's nothing you can do. Honestly, here we're looking at someone who's a hired hand. Even though you are accepted in the family and love, there is love. This is your family. You've adopted them, they've kind of adopted you, but they never imagined that there would be a marriage or a union between their child and you. And so in your current life, you might actually feel sometimes like you're powerless, or you might give your power away to others, or you might be someone that asks for permission from others when it doesn't have to, you don't need permission from others, but it just might be like this innate sense in you to have to get permission, or I guess like just the feeling of not, again, giving away your power, or not feeling like you have the power to make certain choices. And if that's the case, I feel like it would come from here, because this is where you were powerless and you had no say. And the idea of even like running away together, like that couldn't have happened. And so we're looking at feelings of neutrality here. And the feeling of neutrality is the feeling of kind of distancing yourself, being removed, cutting yourself off from yourself. So you might be someone in this life that numbs yourself to certain desires or dreams that you might have automatically for no reason, but just simply because you feel like they're out of reach, or you feel like, oh, why would I, how could I ever do that? Or maybe even as far as I'm not worthy of that. You might have feelings of unworthiness in this life. And if any of this speaks to you, it's because it stems from here, and from not being in control of your life, not being able to have the power to make certain things happen. And that's what this life is, almost very subservient, because even though you're in control of where you can work, like you can always leave. You can always leave and find other jobs. But in the end, you only have so many skills, and you also need to have a roof over your head and food. So it's like, yeah, you're in control of your own body, but at the same time, you have this job that you have to do, and it's good work, and you feel comfortable, and in order to keep that going and have that security, you also have to kind of bow down to others and their requests or whatever, because you do work for them. So this also might translate in your current life as someone who is working at a job that you may not love, or maybe have worked at a job you don't love, or kind of working for the man, or working in a job where you have a boss and you're not your own boss. And it might be comfortable for you actually to have a boss, but at the same time you might be like, I hate taking orders, and I hate having to like be at someone's beck and call. So keep that in mind too. And if that's the case, I feel like that would be coming up as a message for you to, if you're thinking about it, then it's time to be your own boss, and to at least find a way of living where you're not at someone's beck and call, to kind of regain your own power and gain your own sense of yourself and what you want, and that your dreams and desires don't have to be neglected or numbed out anymore if that's the case, okay? So keep that in mind. Because on the other hand, you could have come back into this life as someone who is fully in charge and doesn't take crap from anyone and is your own boss. You know what I mean? You might have chosen to come back as that because we're looking at a life where you weren't that. So see what speaks to you and see what you connect with, all right? So the death card here, we're going to the death, and this is an accident card. So I'm trying to see what the accident is, and it feels like there's an ingestion of something that you're not supposed to. Okay, so it feels like the job you're doing, it feels like you're working with a certain chemicals, and it's almost like the chemicals, almost like you're and they are not aware that the chemicals or whatever you're working with is actually what's the word? Not fatal, but like it's poisonous or something. Like it over time it poisons the system. So it feels like you actually died by accident because it wasn't intentional, through inhaling, or yeah, it's almost like being around certain chemicals that you use for your job in this enclosed chamber area. And unbeknownst to you, it weakens your system on the inside. So in your current life, if you have a weakened immune system, if you have breathing problems like asthma or allergies, if you are fatigued, if you are like chronically fatigued and you don't know why, anything else? This could also indicate headaches and sensitivities to certain chemicals. So if those are any symptoms that you currently have in your life, it could very well stem from here. And those kinds of things you can move past once you realize that they don't serve you and they're not even from this life, they're from another time. And you're able to move past those through either deep meditation, hypnosis. There's certain things you can be doing to get rid of those kind of like soul memories, or cell memories, I guess, soul cell memories, because they're not relevant anymore. So keep that in mind if any of those speak to you, as well as the dehydration thing. Now, the lesson of this life here, this is the work hard card. And we're seeing that through all this. It's not just the working hard at your job, it's also the working hard at like living and having emotional balance when you didn't have a family to teach you so much, and working hard to, there's also this sense of ethics, like you stay an ethical, moral person despite not having been taught that very long. Like it's almost like you had to keep up the lessons you were taught as a very young child before the loss of your family or parents. And that's hard work too, because it's almost like a feeling of being exhausted at remembering things from your past that you've had to like keep up your whole life. It's an exhausting feeling. And also the fact that you had to like work many jobs. And then this right here, this is emotionally exhausting. You had to work hard to be able to compartmentalize your feelings for this person and stay with the family even though you couldn't have what you wanted. It's almost like the feeling of, true love being lost or taken away and still having to maintain normalcy in your life. That's exhausting. So we're seeing this life of very, very hard work. And I feel like this message would be coming through to you in your current life to kind of, as a reminder that you've already been through this. You've been through the ringer emotionally and even physically with the jobs having to survive, that you don't need to do it anymore. So of course we have to like work and pay bills and all of that, but it doesn't have to be as hard as it once was. You don't have to, it's almost like if you find that your life is very hard in that way, emotionally or otherwise, it's almost a sense of you doing it to yourself based on this soul memory of having almost like, well, it has to be hard. Like it has to be hard in order to reap rewards, but that's not the case. I feel like that's not true. Like it did here, but not anymore. So it's almost like a message of don't make things so hard on yourself. Let things go. Like just let go of some emotional baggage you might be holding on to. And if not, that's fine. But that's just what feels like is coming through. And it's also, again, the message is you don't have to work so hard. You can let go of things and try to focus on what you want, on self-empowerment, self-care, self-love, going after your dreams, not taking crap from other people, because that's then and it's not now. It doesn't have to be now. You can create a completely different life. So there's your past life reading. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you were able to make some connections, and thanks for letting me read you.